Welcome back, everybody. We are reviewing A Man's Search for Meaning, or Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. He is a Austrian, Austrian logarithmic therapist. He basically developed this entire branch of psychology and psychotherapy to deal with all kinds of issues that humans have to deal with. So I'm going to give you my thoughts and my opinions. First of all, the author himself, there he is, Viktor Frankl. What a life. If you don't know, Viktor Frankl survived the Holocaust. He was in 4 different camps over the course of several years. He lost his father, mother, wife, all of his external family. I think only him and his sister are the only people in his family who survived the Holocaust. So the first half of the book really deals with his experience, how his experience really shaped his worldview, his perception of life, his character. He shares a lot of very difficult to read stories of people he knew in the camps, some of the guards, some of the people who showed him kindness, some of the people who did not show him kindness. Man alive, he nearly starved, he nearly died of typhoid. He had all kinds, just horrible experience. However, he, like I said, he developed this thing called logotherapy, which is based on the idea that humans' primary motivational force is to find meaning in life. Logos, Latin for meaning. So he had started developing this before the whole ordeal he went through, but the ordeal itself really helped shape kind of what he saw and how he dealt with it all. It's an incredible book. I absolutely recommend it. Really, realistically, this book, Man's Search for Meaning, should be required reading for an awful lot of people, especially as a history book, but also as a book about finding meaning, about, discovering who you want to be in life, all of that kind of stuff, because it is very relevant. It is important, and things like that should never be repeated ever again. But only time will tell. So I wrote some notes. I wrote some opinions and some things about the book that I think are interesting. So a lot of what Frankl talks about is meaning, and how finding your meaning in life can be the sort of most important thing, and it can really center yourself. It can really focus you. It can help discover what you are looking for. It turns out that focusing and refocusing your meaning can be a huge solution to various neurotic behavior, neuroses. There's a lot there. I've got a few quotes that I like as well. So, man needs something for the sake of which to live. He who has a why to live for can bear any how. That's a quote from Nietzsche. But I really like that. He uses that quote throughout the book. He who has a why to live for can bear any how. And basically, if you have a meaning, you become sort of untouchable, unshakable. It's interesting. It's interesting because a lot of what he says goes back to what I think of as Taoism, and finding a meaning, becoming unshakable, not letting the external world affect you, because you have your own internal moral code, you have your own internal meaning. So it's interesting. A lot of these books that I've read have a lot of similarities inside of them, and you can find these commonalities, these invisible strings tying them all together. So he talks about existential frustration, which is when your meaning of life becomes misdirected. It can be caused by periods of boredom or apathy. And I think we've all felt that. We've all felt like bored, or we're just apathetic, which means like you kind of just lose, you're like, I don't care. I don't care about this. I don't care about that. And when I do that personally, like it is a huge frustration, but it also leads me to do bad habits. I get into bad routines. I feel really bad. My mental health goes down. My physical health goes down. It's just not good. So I thought that was interesting that he has like an actual terminology that describes some of these things. He talks about the existential vacuum, which is the void of meaning many people face today. And it's basically like, I think a lot of people have this. A lot of people have this like, well, I don't have a purpose in life. Like I'm just like going from one simple pleasure to another. And then, I have to go to work to get money, and then I can go back and do my simple pleasure. And, it's just this cycle of no growth, and you just feel nothing. So I like that really resonated with me. He said that your meaning of life can be an ever-changing thing based on your personal life and what you find to be interesting. It's neat. Frankl sort of talks a lot about like personal responsibility, and it makes me think of like a lot of what Jordan Peterson says nowadays about, cleaning your room, keep your shoulders down, your head level, and just like go through life with a purpose and with a responsibility. Frankl touches on this a lot, and I think Frankl and Peterson have a lot of commonalities when it comes to sort of the psychological approach, how you view your life, what does your life mean, personal responsibility, and doing the things that you need to do. So there were a lot of commonalities that I found in there as well. Oh yeah, this is the quote that Frankl absolutely loves. It's the one he coined, and he really likes it. And he says, "Live as if you are living for the second time, and if you are acting as wrongly this time as you did the first time." I want to talk about that. So I will repeat it, and then we'll talk about it. Live as if you are living for the second time, and if you are acting as wrongly this time as you did the first. So if you can imagine, imagine that you are at the end of your life, and I want you to try and look back at your life and say, what was your life meaning? Like, what was your purpose? What did you accomplish? What did you do? Now, just quickly, like, think, okay, what did I do in my life? Well, maybe I had some kids, maybe I had a career, maybe I was there for my friends, like whatever it was. Like, just try and imagine yourself as an old man, old woman, old person, whatever. Imagine yourself as this old person and look back on your life, and then think like, well, okay. And then ask yourself, was that life full of meaning? Did you accomplish what you wanted to do? Did you set the things in motion that you wanted to do? Maybe if you had kids, maybe your kids turned out really good and you feel really accomplished about that, and you gave your kids a good start in life. Maybe you achieved something as an academic, or as like a laborer, or you were a property developer and you built homes for people, or, just try and imagine, what was the meaning of your life? Okay. So once you've done that, put yourself back in today's shoes and go, okay, what am I doing wrong right now? What can I improve? What can I be doing better? What are the steps I'm going to take to achieve meaning in my life that I find meaningful and important? Because that's the thing. Meaning is all relative. It's all about your perception. Someone might have a meaning where they're like, I want to have as many kids as possible and raise them to be amazing people, and like have a bunch of grandkids and have all these descendants. And that might be your meaning. Your meaning is to have this huge family and to raise responsible human beings for the next generation. And that's a great meaning, like I'm not bashing that at all, but that might be your meaning. Your meaning might also be, no, I'm going to have a small apartment. I'm going to have a cat and love my family and my friends or whatever. But I'm not going to have a big impact on the planet. I want to leave the planet better than I found it. So maybe that's your meaning, is your meaning is to live responsibly, ethically, and within your means so that you're not, you know, harming anything for future generations. And that's a great meaning too. So that's the idea, is live as if you were living for the second time, and if acting wrongly this time as you did the first. So like imagine like you imagine your future circumstance, and then you're like, okay, what was wrong about that? Now I can change it here and now. Is kind of the idea. Oh yeah, I like this. He said that the meaning of your life almost never centers on yourself. Usually it's found throughout the world or in others. And I really like that. I like the idea that most of us have an altruistic meaning in our life. Like when I was reading this book, I was like, man, like what is my meaning? And I thought like, well, I want to be there for my friends and family. That's like a really, really important thing to me. I want to try and help people the best I can with positivity, just making them laugh every day, bringing some happiness, maybe introducing people to concepts and things like this. And I think that that's a great meaning, you know, like if at the end of my life, I can look back and say like, oh man, like I made a difference. I created less suffering in the world, just very, very small. I will be really happy with that. You know, that will be absolutely fantastic. So, but it has very little to do with actually me, right? Like it's other people that I would like to help, right? It's very rarely like, oh, I want to achieve this. You know, maybe like a high level athlete or something. But I think even an athlete would say like, no, I want to inspire the next generation. I want to like show people it's possible to do anything with any kind of upbringing or background, or, you know, like there's like a lot of people do things for all kinds of different motivations, but that is also has to do with the meaning that they derive from their life. So I thought that was really cool. It's usually never about yourself. It's usually about other people or the world or the environment or whatever. Like you're wanting to save the whales or, you know. So I really love that. Okay, now I'm a stupid romantic. So he talks about love. And honestly, guys, the first part of the book where he talked about his wife, so his wife died very early on in the Holocaust, but he had no idea, obviously, because he was separated from her very early on. And so the entire time he is going through these camps, he is thinking about her. He is hoping that she's having a way better time than him. He is, you know, really hoping that they're going to get reunited. There's this whole like a lot of his meaning in that first part was like focused on his wife and like getting back to her and stuff. And then he finds out that no, she didn't make it through. He did later like go on to like remarry and have a family and things like that. But it shifted his meaning and stuff. But and so that was like incredibly sad and very hard to read. But thankfully it didn't have like a perfect ending, but it had, you know, it didn't end in absolute misery. You know, he did find peace and love, which I'm really thankful for. So in the second part of the book, when he's talking more about the therapy and, you know, these ideas, he talks about the meaning of love. And hopeless romantic that I am, I really love what he said. So he said that the meaning of love is to see in someone their essential traits and features, as well as the potential in them. And by loving, you make that potential a reality, which I freaking love. I love the concept that you fall in love with somebody for who they are right now, but you can also see like who they are and their character and who they will become. And you just like, you fall in love with that. And like, I'm a sucker for that. I'm a real sucker for falling in love for someone for who they are right now. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm not like, I can change them and make them better. No. I'm saying you fall in love for who they are, but you also fall in love with like who they will become, you know, like you and that person are like eternally bound in this like love. And I don't know, I just thought it was really sweet. And, you know, I think it's really, really important. And so, yeah, he talks a lot about love. And so I wrote some other notes, but I recommend you read the book because he is far more eloquent than I will ever be. And English is his second language. So, you know, the translation of this is just amazing. He talks about the meaning of suffering, which is to find meaning in life when confronted with hopeless situations. That's kind of like one of the pivotal points about the book, is that no matter how much you suffer, if you have a meaning in life, you will always be able to fight through the suffering, and you will always be able to withstand any torture, withstand any great, like he nearly starved to death. He nearly died of infection. He nearly died because of just evil guards. He had so many obstacles, but he had this meaning because he really wanted to get this book out. Like, he was writing a book in his mind while he was in the camps. He was like, no, this information needs to get out because I feel so strongly about this message. And so it's kind of interesting that the book that he wanted to get out was about meaning and about dealing with great suffering. And he was dealing with great suffering and finding his meaning while in, like, it's a bit of a mind confusion when you think of it that way. But yeah, so here's another quote. In some ways, suffering ceases to be suffering at the moment it finds a meaning. So he talks about like some of his like clinical patients and things, and how when he can show them like, well, this is what you're living for, they completely like shift their mind view, and suddenly they're great. Like they have figured out like, oh, that's what my life means. Oh my gosh. He talks about this woman who attempted to herself, and she had like a very disabled son. And so he basically like shows her like, well, the meaning of your life has been to like care for your son and prevent him from having to be in an institution. And as soon as she realizes that that's like her life purpose, and how much she loves her son, and how much she's like, no, like, this is my life's work. This is my purpose. And she completely does a 180, and her depression, I wouldn't say her depression is cured, but she has a much easier time understanding the world, and suddenly her suffering is significantly reduced. It's almost erased, because she realizes that it's not suffering. She's working towards an important meaning. And so her son is able to have this life. So I thought that was really cool. It's really neat. There's a few other things. So there's the collective neurosis, and that's whatever the current issue in the world that the current generation is facing. And so he claims that today our collective neurosis is this private and personal form of nihilism. So nihilism is the idea that there is no meaning, there is no specific purpose. And I think that's like really true. Like, I think if you look at social media and you look at the world as a whole right now, there is a real lack of meaning, and people have a hard time deriving meaning from their lives. And so it's like, well, what does my life mean? Well, nothing. And he talks about like the rise in atheism and the rise of like less spirituality, the rise of like political problems. The Cold War was going on when he was writing these books. And so he talks about how the collective neurosis today is just this private and personal form of nihilism, however you want to say it. How so many of us look at our lives and go like, well, we're just going to chase this individual pleasure. We're going to chase this like small meaning in life. We're going to live for the weekends. And I don't think he would think that that is a very good way to live. I think you need to find a meaning in your life that brings you joy. It's a thing that you can work towards. It gives you some personal responsibility, all of that. So the last thing that I will touch on, and then I will let you guys go, is he talks about the tragic triad, which are the three things in life that are tragic. And by tragic, he means like they're almost insurmountable. You can't escape these things. These things will happen no matter what. However, he gives us the human potential to each of these three things. He gives us the human potential of how you overcome the thing. So for example, the first of the tragic triad is pain. We all have to deal with pain. You stub your toe, whatever. And he says that human potential allows us to turn suffering into a human achievement and accomplishment, because he said that you can look back on whatever you've survived and say, I have survived this. He kind of looks, it's interesting because Taoism looks at the past and says the past doesn't exist. It's gone. It doesn't matter anymore. You know, like don't live in the past. Frankl says that the past is frozen. It's unchangeable. Nobody can take your past away from you. And so he says that like old people have this special superpower that because they have done all of these things and experienced all these things, nothing can take that away from them. They have achieved those things. They have survived the pain, and the past is gone, but you can remember it and it's like frozen there, unchangeable. Like it happened, you know, which is an interesting take. I don't know if I necessarily 100% agree with it, but it's interesting. Anyway, so yeah, pain, you can turn that human suffering into achievement and accomplishment. I survived this. And like, he is a survivor. He is like the textbook definition of somebody who survived pain. The second of the triad is guilt. And he says, deriving from guilt, the opportunity to change oneself for the better. So you can sort of don't live in regret and don't, you know, sort of feel guilty about the past. But he's saying you can use it as a change of like, I will never do that again. You know, I've learned from this. And I think that's a very good human way of overcoming guilt. The third and final thing is death. And he says that human potential can derive from life's transitoriness and an incentive to take responsible action. So he says that because it's basically like life is short, live your life, essentially. Life is transitory, you know, things die, other things are born. Everything that was born will one day die. Like that's how it works. And so from that whole fact that life is fleeting, we can take this incentive and say, man, life is fleeting. Like I gotta be responsible. I cannot waste my time here. Which I think is fantastic. I think that's such a good way of overcoming the difficulty of death. And you can kind of look back at the people that you have lost in your life and say, you know what, like they lived their life on their terms. And even if they didn't make the right decisions all the time, they lived a life. They got to fulfill what they wanted to fulfill, or they did what they tried to do. And that in itself sort of fulfills the whole point of being born and then dying. So yeah, guys, go read this. Honestly, like go read it. Man's Search for Meaning. It is absolutely wonderful. I'm definitely going to have to read it again. You can get an audiobook for it. It's available kind of everywhere. This copy came from Amazon, Man's Search for Meaning. I know it's all reversed, but whatever. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. I really hope you enjoyed this little book review, the little things that I took from Viktor Frankl. I've listened to a few of his interviews and some of his stuff about logotherapy. Really neat stuff. Definitely going to look into it. I might do a whole video on sort of the psychology of logotherapy and what I'm going to incorporate into my life, because it's been really interesting. So yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know your comments. Let me know if you've read the book, or if you're going to read the book, or you might watch this, go read the book, come back and give me your comments. Thank you so much. And as always, I will talk to you guys tomorrow.